Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Fife Property Blog Show this Saturday morning. I say the Fife Property Blog Show. It could be the Edinburgh Blog Show, the Dundee Blog Show, Glasgow Blog.
Glasgow. Any, to be honest, because
Yeah,
the content it would give is not just relevant to Fife.
I'm
It's
just going to say it's
completely
all,
relevant to any landlord or investor.
it really is. It's all relevant. And the topic today is one that I think is just really quite, it's basically lettings and property management 101 for me, and it's badly managed. And we're going to cover the 5 signs that maybe it's time to reconsider your letting agent and look at a different one if these things are an issue. For me, they are the basics and should be followed. So we're going to try and talk through them as best we can today. Keep it interactive, guys. We are live. Any questions, if you've got any experiences or views on what we're talking about with relation to property management of lettings, then please jump in. This is a topic that I have spent years doing, so I like to talk about it. So using a managing agent for your rental property, it should really leave you with a full confidence and not have any worry and leave you free of stress and hassle. And you should also in turn have long-term tenants in place. Letting agents to do the proper referencing process and go through that whole process at the beginning to find the right tenant. It should be to find the right person for that property and ultimately have longevity from the tenancy. Have full legal compliance and efficient maintenance and repairs and things through their management service. So that's how it should be. Unfortunately,
Yep.
that's not every landlord's experience, and not all agents live up to their hype. And a poor one can cause a string of headaches and stress, but not knowing or whether or when to possibly switch or how to find the right agent, it's sometimes not always clear. So with that in mind, we are going to cover today, as I said, the 5 clear signs, I would say, that you need to maybe consider a different agent or that you need to consider when you're choosing an agent. So what we're going to cover today is number 1 for me is poor communication. Communication is always the one that comes up in property management if it's not done correctly. We're looking at high tenant turnover and vacancy rates, so occupancy rate of your property. If you have a rental property, whether it's 1 or whether you have 5 or whether you have 50, occupancy rate is so important, not just for you and making an income, but also for being able to maintain the property for the tenant and keep things obviously the way they should be. Disorganised maintenance and repairs is something that is a really important one as well. Lack of legal compliance is right up there at the top of the list, and unclear or possibly unexpected fees. So when your agent isn't really transparent about what it's going to cost to actually use their service, there really is no need to accept anything less than excellence from your managing agent, especially when they're dealing with your property portfolio and your biggest tax-free asset and things. So as I said, whatever size your portfolio is, whether it's 1, 5, 50, let's explore whether it's time for you to change agent or how you could choose the right agent from the beginning.
I kind of feel like at this point imposter syndrome, if that makes sense. We're going to talk about badly managed 5 signs it's time to change your managing agent. But I'm sure there's a
Well,
few people that actually think it. No, just hear me out. I'm sure there's a few people that we manage that think we just do money for old rope here,
of
but
course
they
you
don't
will.
realise the reason that they're not getting interrupted. It's a smooth sailing, plain process for them. They don't really get involved at all, and they think they're paying money for old rope. But the reality is, it's because we're managing it correctly.
Yeah.
And so and when you think about the logic of this as well, silver award for the Estes, which is customer service in Scotland, and number 1 in Fife, for that. So we're quite prominent in the managing and the letting industry. Well, I have been for 30 years anyway, as a landlord or investor. And also the EA Masters, which
Yeah.
is a different award system. Actually, we never went in for it. They just monitor and assess your performance, mystery shop you, and
Yeah.
lo and behold, we've got gold for that as well.
That's 2 years running for that.
And I was quite surprised because it's like, wait a minute, is this something I don't know about? Because it's like they
Yeah,
just
I
write
know.
to you and say, by the way, you've got an award, and the reason why. Obviously, they're trying to sell you to get into their system, but the reality is they are properly mystery shopping you.
Yeah,
Which is actually quite good, because one system, which is the customer one, tests the customer experience, and the other system would probably test the systems, the processes, the buyer, the results and all the rest of it. Time to let, amount of the average amount of the let, and all these different things, all these analytics that are actually key and performance indicators to a letting agency itself.
do you know, mystery shopping, I feel like it used to be a lot more common than it is now. And it's the best way to find out whether a service level is good enough or not, because you're catching them when they're not expecting it. It's all one, obviously, getting feedback and things with people when you know, like, if you know somebody's coming in to inquire about a property and things like that. So, do you know, but to catch people when they don't know is the best way to find out the real service that they're providing. So I think
I
mystery
do I
shopping
do it
is a
all the
great.
time.
Yeah,
I do all the
but
time when it comes to sales, because I'm an investor and
yeah,
I send
oh yeah,
requests via different methods. And the reason I send it via different methods is not because it's convenient. It's basically because it's a great opportunity for me to test someone else's system and text it
mhm,
and see how long it is for them to get back to me, and then just benchmark it against ourselves. And that kind of, because I still think, regardless of the the numerous awards we've had, I still think it's just normally just what people do. It's
yeah, I
like,
know.
clearly, obviously not, because other people do not get these awards and they're being assessed as well. So I just think it's normal, because maybe my standards are way up there, where everybody else's standards maybe down here.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And the response times and getting back to people and things is so important. And that brings us nicely into the first topic for this morning. It's poor communication. And communication is just such a key element of property management and lettings and even sales and things as well, of course. So I think regular and respectful communication is really, it's the foundation of any successful relationship. And I think in
Mhm.
any walk of life, but obviously we're talking about lettings and business here. And yeah, it's consistently the largest complaint that landlords have about their agents. And you see it time and time again. And if your messages are often possibly ignored, if you're a landlord, or your questions are met with possibly a vague response, or do you know, if it comes over that they might actually not know the answer, rather than say, I'm not too sure about that, I'll go and find out and come back to you. Do you know, they muddle their way through. That's not the way to do it. It could be that your agent's possibly overwhelmed or simply not prioritizing your property or your
So here's my
portfolio.
thoughts on pure communication then. Let me just
Yeah.
think about this. Pure communication, I think it's a lot to do with both parties
Mhm.
understanding how each other communicate, or possibly the managing agent understanding how to communicate correctly with the personality of
The
the actual
individual. Yeah.
landlord or investor they're taking on. And that means whether they're a red personality profile, whether they're yellow outgoing, whether they're introvert, whether they're extrovert, whether they like details, whether they don't like the details, and they just can't be bothered with the faff. These are the sort of things you have to
Mhm.
understand about your customer, that you're dealing with, in order to communicate with them effectively. And it's taking that individual approach to each one of them. It will make sure that you provide that service to them. Hence the reason why you get people giving you 5 stars all the time on things
Mhm.
like the Estes. I mean, we don't predominantly use Google reviews, and everybody goes, go Google reviews, go do Google reviews, and it's like, yeah, fine. Everybody uses Google reviews, and that's fine. And we do have it as part and parcel of the Estes. But the Estes for us is the biggest feedback system, because it's independent. Whereas
Yeah.
Google reviews can be manufactured by someone else, whereas the
Yeah.
Estes can't be, because I have, well, for want of a better phrase, I have hauled them over the coals about the way they audit all the votes that come in on the Estes, and make sure there's no duplicate IP addresses to say that
Yeah.
anybody's cheating, and make sure they do audits on all the rest of it. And I've done that over the years, and just given them, oh God, I'm surprised they've not actually drummed me out and says, look, we're not taking you, and we didn't want you, we don't want you to be a part of the Estes, to be honest, because you're too task orientated, and you're too much a auditor. That's what I
But then
did. I was
to
an
be fair,
accountant, so internal control and auditing is my thing. I excelled in it in accountancy and exams.
I think to be fair though, when you think back to the way the voting system and that whole process was back when I first started getting involved with ESTAs and things to what it is now, and I know where you've interjected and obviously and advised them, and how it's such a better system now, and it's more kind of airtight in the fact of this is really the feedback we're getting, and it's not being manufactured or or tampered with. I think that's really important. Because what's the point in doing that? You're just kidding yourself. You're an agent, and you've got.
But it's one of my friends said they're just an award for, and she said it, hooer. She says I'm just an awards hooer.
Oh,
it's like where's my husband? Whereas my husband couldn't care less. So that's I was actually quite surprised, but I wasn't surprised because I know her personality, and she's so funny. But because people are like that, and because people just want the award, they're not really interested in the actual process and the feedback. Whereas I mean, MIS, there's no Secret Service thing here. MIS, Management Information Systems, is what I excelled in, surprise, surprise, at college and in my HND and that as well. And management information systems are there to give the right feedback, but you have to put the right information in to get the feedback. That's key here. Because if you just manufacture that information that goes in the first place, you're just getting the same manufactured information back. Garbage in, garbage out. So this is why it's key and essential to make sure that you have that feedback all the time, to make sure you're doing things in the way that the landlord expects, but also to make sure you're doing things in the way the legislation expects. So let's talk more about the communication and the poor communication. What is the things, and the you talked about vague responses. You talked about the maybe agents that are overwhelmed and how you would notice that. What are the signs that could be the case?
Yeah, so the vague responses, or even no responses, or that radio silence. Do you know, when you're a landlord and you have a question or a concern, you should really receive a quick response. And even if that response is just to acknowledge the fact that you've contacted them, from the agent's perspective, because and I've seen this time and time again, and maybe the agent doesn't have the answer at that time, or maybe they're not quite up to speed with what's been going on with the situation that the landlord's asking about. So rather than tell the landlord, okay, I'm going to go and check up on that and find out the information and come back to you, they go and do that first without telling the landlord that. So the landlord sat there thinking, I'm just not getting a response. Whereas the agent thinks, oh, but I'm dealing with it, but you've not told the landlord that.
I say this every single time to people. It's like if you were in the investor or the landlord's shoes or the customer's shoes, what would you be thinking at this point in time if they've asked you a question on email or on phone and you have gone radio silent on them?
Mm-hmm.
What would they be thinking? Because they're like looking for us. But I was communicating with a customer last night up till about 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because he wants to put his property on, and I've gone, right, that's the ECOSA done, or the electronic seller agreement. I says it's sent over to you. And I sent him a text this morning just to follow up to say, right, that's it to you. So it gets signed and I can get the videos done today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on a Saturday. It's like the Wall Street thing where money never sleeps, but where Jim never sleeps. I've got a new Garmin. It's like it monitors my sleep, and I went, yeah, okay, you slept no bad, but you had a lot of interrupted sleep here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be interested to have that feedback because I need to get that sorted out that bit. And I just it's passion. I think it drives me to do that. So radio silence is definitely one of the key things here, but you have to realize from an investor or landlord's point of view, they're dealing with other people as well. It's not just all about you. You're maybe paying anything up to 50 to 100 quid every single month to get your property managed. That doesn't give you the exclusive right to have one person at the end of the phone every time you want them, anytime you want them.
Yeah, there is a balance, and we do live in a society now where it's like this instant society, and people do expect it. I feel that sometimes email, I mean, when I'm dealing with investors and things, I do a lot on WhatsApp now, and it is quite instantaneous, and it's a brilliant way of communication. You can share everything there, and it's in your hand. I know emails are in your hand, but agents and managing agents think they have a lot of emails to go through. So there might be alternative ways to communicate, but even just that initial acknowledgement of their communication and that you'll come back to them will satisfy them in the meantime, rather than just complete radio silence. That is such an important
Yeah.
thing.
A good one about you talked about the reactive approach here, and you've got it down here. So I will give you a great example of reactive approach. Is the fact that, well, the reactive approach is good agents anticipate issues, but a lot of agents actually wait for something to come up or wait for something to happen. They wait for it to happen and then they react to it, whereas you've got to be proactive. Here's a classic example of good proactivity: going through every single tenancy, looking at the fact that is the rent at the right level, and should we be reassessing that and reviewing that rent
especially
for the landlord? Now, why would I be doing that? Because I could hear the tenants associations out there up in arms about it, pitchforks and torches. But they need to make sure, we need to make sure the landlords are actually getting the right return in order to encourage them to stay in the market. Not for our benefit, but for the tenants' benefit. Because then if they don't, and they're not in the market, the tenant's got nowhere else to stay. They'll have to be evicted. So we'll have to do that, but we also have to make sure they've got the right return in order for them to be able to reinvest in the property. So when we pick up the phone to the landlord or the investor and say, this needs to be done, like a new heating system needs to be put in, new windows need to be put in, a new door needs to be put in, new carpets need to be put in, a new kitchen needs to be put in, new bathroom needs to be put in, they don't have the opportunity to go, I can't afford it. Because we've got them the right rent level. We know the return they're making on the money, on the property. And if they've gone and spent it on themselves, that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, the money should have gone back in to build the wealth and build the stock. Because
it should have been in the pot for reinvestment.
If you're getting in the buy-to-let business for income, right, for an income every month, it's maybe not the right thing to do unless you've got huge amounts of capital. Buy-to-let is really a medium to long-term strategy in order to increase the value of the property over time, and the money that you bring in, the income, services the debt at that time as well. And that's where your capital appreciation, the exit, is the final sale, or you've built the portfolio big enough, you can hugely reinvest in the stock, but you could also take a normal income out.
That's where we see a lot of people making the mistake, and they think, oh, I'm going to get into property investment, I'm going to build a portfolio, but they're too concentrated on the income every month rather than thinking about rather than thinking about the long term. And that's why a few years in and there's no money, and we're coming to them, like you say, repairs that need done. I know I've not got money to do that. Well, should. Definitely. So and that implementing rent increases and reviewing that on an annual basis now, and going to the landlord, that brings us in to kind of talk about like that irregular contact. Because I mean, if you're not only hearing for your agent when it's something bad or it's a repair, do you know, if you're not hearing for your agent to say, right, it's time to maybe reassess the rent and things like that and have that added value to them, then maybe they're maybe not having the full attention on your property or portfolio that they should be. So do you know, that's something you should get for your managing agent. And if not, then it's something to question, why not? Do you know why I'm only hearing from you when it's something that needs done or something that's bad?
Good communication doesn't take much. It's really just courteous. But I always say it's just common sense. But unfortunately, it's not that common. It's how you would like to be treated yourself. That's all you need to do. If you expect somebody to phone you back after asking a question within a certain period of time, it's possibly even being agreed, then you should be phoning them back yourself. Do you eat your own cooking? Do you do your own thing? It's like you tell someone else to do it, but you'll not do it yourself. And I think that's probably one of the most important things. This then, I would imagine, then will lead to high tenant turnover or vacancy rates, which will actually give a real clue about if the tenancy has been managed correctly, isn't it?
Yeah. Because I mean, if you've got an agent that's unresponsive to you, they might be unresponsive to the tenant. That might upset the tenancy, and then ultimately they leave, and then that leaves you with another turnover of a tenancy. And high tenancy turnover and vacancy or occupancy rates is so important, as you said, Jim, for the income and for reinvestment in the property. An excellent agent should find you reliable, long-term tenants, and high turnover and extended vacant periods are often due to the ineffective way that they're attracting tenants, qualifying tenants, and ultimately managing them as well. That initial reference and period where you choose the tenant is so important. and it sets the precedence for the entire tenancy. If it's done wrong at the beginning, you're not off on the right foot.
Yeah.
And that brings us to talk about the insufficient screening process, if you want to, for a better word. If your tenants frequently maybe break the terms of the agreement, create problems, then your agent's referencing procedure may not have been as rigorous as it should have been. I mean, Jim,
it's maybe a drive for income in the very beginning because they're maybe new into the market and they're needing income to survive. So they just take anybody with a pulse, at this point in time, just to get the property filled. But you do tend to find you've got firefighting all the time. I still can't get over the fact that why a managing agent or why a letting agency would actually do that, or even a landlord, because you're just giving yourself more hassle. So it would be in the interest, really, to do the screening correctly, the reference checking and everything in the beginning, in order to get the right type of tenant and the right quality of tenant in order to put them in. I think that's the most important thing. That then leads to, I would say, high vacancy rates as well. Your agent should really be proactively looking to secure new tenants quickly. Classic example is, me. As soon as a tenancy becomes vacant, I'm like, right, when are we advertising it?
yeah,
But it's religious, and I would imagine at some point in time, the team actually think that straight away, and they probably hear my voice as soon as even if it's somebody else's tenancy becomes vacant, they'll probably be thinking. I could hear Jim saying now, when is it going to be filled, or when are we advertising it to get it filled? And I think that's the key. So high vacancy rates, which is the occupancy rate, where the property is actually empty, you're earning no money. It's costing you money all the time, even though you think it's not. It's costing you. Even though you think it's not costing you money, because, I don't have a mortgage, it's not costing me money. I have utilities which stop for that period, it's not costing me money. Excuse me, but it is costing you money, and it's costing you money on the return on the capital you've got invested in that property, because you're not getting any return at that point in time where the property is empty. Even though it's not technically costing you money out of your own pocket, it's still costing you the opportunity of the money and the return you could have made elsewhere, not on the property, elsewhere. You could have taken that money and put it in the bank and earned 3-4% maybe.
It's opportunity cost.
Yeah, it's the opportunity cost to that. So you could have had that money in a bank, and that's why a lot of people actually say, because of things like this and buy to let, I've been as well selling it and have no hassle and just put the money in the bank. Hence the reason why we talked about being proactive in terms of the right rent levels, the right tenant, the right occupancy rate, all these different things. So that's the sort of things to secure everything. And then as well, there's another thing as well as the rent levels which you've got to set. This is a telltale sign. When a agent comes into you and does a pitch, are they trying to overvalue the property? I've still got people in the Scottish Property Network that I'm adminning, and the person says, I'm selling a house that's 130 grand in Lothian. I think it's Lothian. And they said, I reckon now you'll probably get about £1,100 per month in rent. And I went, if you get £1,100 a month in rent and guarantee that for me, I will buy it now. Crickets. Tumbleweed. Person's never actually responded back to me. So they definitely wanted it sold, but I says, I would buy it if you get me that and guarantee it. So they're basically bullshitting.
They're over that. Yeah, they're over. Yeah, over.
This is your property sourcers as well. They're rife for it. It's like, and this is your auction houses as well. They're rife for it as well. You could make this amount of return on this property because of this one round the corner. It just so happens to be mint condition and yours isn't.
Yeah.
So it's like you've still got to put 20-30 grand into that to get it to the right state to get that rent round the corner. So see all this over egging and the things like rental levels and unrealistically high rent. There's a telltale sign that you have really got to you have maybe got the wrong agent, or you're maybe speaking to the wrong agent at that point in time. I think personally, for me, it's about getting the rent at the right level so the tenant is happy with that. You're happy with the return you're making, and you've got a tenant which will stay in that property for the long term, which is high occupancy rate, which is great because you're always earning money, just like in the bank. They will look after the property themselves more than likely. They will do some of the minor things probably themselves for repairs and improvements, which is bizarre. I've had people actually, I'll put a kitchen in. Okay, split if you want. You want me to buy the kitchen? No, I'll just do it myself. What? Eh? that doesn't. Okay, if you want, because that's a long-term tenant then.
Yeah.
It wants to
And
do that.
it
So
demonstrates that they're thinking about being there for a longer time.
yeah. So am I really bothered about trying to maximise the rent at that point in time? Because it's you're probably, it's the old thing about the, you know what it reminds me? It reminds me of the parody, and I'll keep saying it, and I talk about it quite a lot. Is the tortoise and the hare? The tortoise just goes steady all the time, like the rent level, steady all the time, just probably under the maximum rent that you can actually get. And then the hare actually just keeps pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And the hare gets no traction and gets no longevity, and actually has points where the hares do nothing, which is
Yeah.
your occupancy, your voids, I would say. So when you look at it like that, it's probably just better to actually get the right type of tenant, the right level, and making sure at the right rent level as well. One of the best tests of a managing agent is tenant stability.
Yeah.
So if you're a responsible and reliable landlord, but your property is performing poorly, then your agent's probably letting you down, I would say.
Yeah, ultimately they are, and it does make it difficult when you're out there trying to value, and you have a realistic view of the local market, but there's obviously other influences on the market that I mean, a lot of landlords I meet and they've got a realistic approach to it, and they don't want to
Yeah.
over egg the rent and things like you said. But then there are some that are like, oh, but this one round here and this one round here, but I says, but they're not comparable and they've not been priced correctly. But I mean, if you're competent as a letting agent, you can demonstrate to them why that is. But it does make your job a wee bit challenging when there's others out there that are not in line with the current market or not being realistic. So over egging the rent is something that
I've always been intrigued by that, because you do get some people on the property networks, the investor networks, saying that I'm getting 850 quid for a property, you're getting 650 for. And I'm like, what's going on there? Is that just made up, or is that a one-off, or is that to try and attract? Because it's like, there's no way anybody's going to pay 850 quid, and if they are, that's few and far between. And I've got a funny feeling the occupancy rate is going to be actually quite
yeah,
low on
it'll be
that.
low. Yeah, it will be low.
They may be getting 850 quid for a couple of months. Maybe it's an insurance claim. So there's the thing. I'll leave out the details. You leave out the details, which actually tells you it's probably only for a couple of months, and they give you that information to make you think what you would normally think was like, oh, you're getting 850 quid all the time.
Yeah, there's a certain online letting platform that just lets basically the landlords make it up and list it whatever price they think they see fit, and people look at that as a comparison, and it's not, because it's not had an agent that knows the market valuing that property. It's just basically, let's make it up and put it out there, and they will definitely have a lower occupancy rate because that won't sustain a long-term tenancy at that rent level and that in the area wherever it may be. So yeah, overrating the rent is something definitely. Yeah, so and then that moves us on to slow or inefficient management, timely and well-handled maintenance to protect your property's value, your property's condition, and to keep your tenants happy ultimately. So there's things to be mindful of. Repairs, delayed repairs. So maintenance requests that take possibly too long to address or get unresolved signal that your agent is not prioritizing your property, or lacks the efficient processes is such an important part of property management. And if they don't have the right processes in place, you will see the cracks start to appear. So a delay on repairs is something that could be detrimental to the maintenance and the value of your property. So don't let that happen from an agent, because it's something, again, it's where they're letting you down. I think there really needs to be a proactive approach to repairs and in a timely and efficient manner. Now, we obviously do, well, I say obviously, but we do in-house management and have an amazing contractors list. It's took us a lot of years to get these reliable contractors, but there are a lot of cowboy contractors out there, and that's something as well, that if you've not got tried and tested contractors, I mean, agents should have a circle of really trusted, qualified, expert contractors to fix issues and do your safety and compliance repairs without the need to repeat visits or correct shoddy work. Do you know, it's the whole thing, pay cheap, pay twice type thing, but still do it in a cost-effective manner, but not too cheaply that it's going to be, do you know, it's going to have to get fixed again. And
when you talk about that, the phrase that pops into my mind is, I can help most people, but I can't help cheap.
Yeah, and that's where I would agree.
And I think a lot of gurus, in other words, the property trainers, the fake gurus, the property trainers who pretend they are huge investors in property, but they're actually making more money at the training, then go on to try and give the example about you could make thousands out of property all the time, and it's that sort of thing. But then they encourage people to do things themselves and knock down walls and fit kitchens, and it's like, oh my god, it's like, and then they're trial and error about everything sometimes, and they don't have the right type of contractors, and then it all goes pear-shaped. Classic example is the ones that are popping up all the time. I try to attract people's money to invest in them in order for them to buy a property, in order to refurbish it, to give them a return on investment. And you hear about the ones that work out, but you don't really hear about the ones that, because you hear about the ones that work out because it's on the platform of the people that are actually trying to sell you the course.
Yeah,
that's how you hear about the ones that work out very well, but they're few and far between. Remember, in every situation, in every bit of lifestyle, in every bit of life, there's always a 5% group, and there's always a 95% group. So you're hearing about the 5% group, the 5% that actually works for them when they go on a course or they're doing anything. The 95% fall by the wayside and they go and do something else. But they've spent and invested a lot of money, and they've caused a lot of heartache on the way as a result of what they've been tried to be taught by someone else. So hence the reason why I'm very, very reluctant to move into the arena of taking people's money and actually investing it in property for them, because I would rather, I've got my own money. I would rather lose that myself than lose 1 pence of somebody else's money. Because it's like I would be heartbroken if I didn't make the right return on somebody else's money, but I'm not bothered about my own.
It's the conscious thing as well. A lot of people do this, and you see some crazy setups, and I think, how have you got the conscience to do that with other people's money? But people do, and it's just the way of the world, I suppose. Unfortunately,
like attracts like.
Yeah.
And I know we all know some of the property trainers that are actually, not really the most above board people, I would say. Sell their granny if it could help them. That's all I could think of. And you'll know these people over on the West Coast. You'll know these type of people. And then down south, I think it's round about Leeds, if that makes sense. He's a bampot. The Furus. Okay, so let's and these are the sort of things that can actually lead people astray and actually cost people money in the end. So cowboy contractors is one thing to avoid, definitely. Hence the reason why you typically should be using you would use a managing agent. And of course I would say that, because I own one, and so do you, and you run one as well. We would say that, but I've done both. I've actually tried to do this all myself. I did this all myself in the very beginning for about 15 years, or maybe even more. And I tell you what, I wish I'd actually got taught somebody to manage it, but I couldn't get somebody at the time. So hence the reason why what I did was I just went and built my own stage. I was never going to be able to get anybody else to learn what I do, because that's not how they do it. So we built our own system, built our own stage, did our own thing, but it's a system designed by an investor and also a landlord for investors and landlords. That's the whole point. That's why I did it. And it's fine. For me personally, it looks after my property, but it also looks after everybody else's property as a result of that. And that made sense for economies of scale for me, because I needed to have my own people to look after my portfolio. So why would they not just give the same type of service to everybody else then?
It's a win-win thing. But do you know, some of our contractors, Jim, are still there from like original contractors you used, and there's a lot of new ones as well. But the good thing is, I get to test them on. I test them on your portfolio first before they're rolled out to everybody else.
Even though they've been here for years, we still test them. I still don't accept anything other than a really high standard in terms of what I do. And if it's not like that, they're hauled over the coals. And I know it's difficult for them. And I know they have challenging times sometimes, because they maybe pick the wrong employee. They maybe bring somebody else in. It's maybe not as good, or they maybe have to subcontract it and they don't tell us. But they get told off for it.
So contractors are such an important element as well. Also inspections, and I know inspections and the whole process of that, since we've come through lockdown, things changed, but we seem to be back on track as an industry as a whole, for access and things. So you should be trying to do that at least every 6 months. Inspections are such a good way to pick up on the minor issues that then could become a major issue, thus saving the property and the landlord a costly repair further down the line. And also, inspections are that opportunity to, continue and build on that relationship with the tenant. And to have that relationship with a managing agent with tenants is so important. I mean, we've had a lot of tenants over the years, and if landlords are having to sell or whatever for whatever reason, the tenants come back to us and say, "Could you find me something with you guys? Because I don't want to move anywhere else," and that says a lot. To have that feedback for the actual people that you
had that
rent
all the
as well.
time. I had that all the time when I first
Yeah.
started just managing myself. I remember all my tenants used to refer all their friends to me, and they used to move out everybody else's properties in the area and actually move into mine. And I just literally bought properties to order. Honestly, it's like I remember at one point I actually took some of my tenants round and went, "What do you think of this? Do you like this? I love that. Oh, this is really nice. I love that. This is like great. I'll buy it for you."
Yeah. You're not finding landlords doing that, or investors do that.
It's like I even did that with the council. You know, when they were doing private sector leasing, I just took them around the property and a couple of properties in Cooper, and I went, "What do you think of this? Do you think this will be good for private sector leasing?" They went, "Yeah, we'll love that. We'll definitely take this, Jim. We'll definitely take the both of them. Definitely. Okay, good stuff. I'll buy them then."
Yeah, is that your
And
ones down the railway station? Yeah.
yeah, I literally just used to buy to order for people because I knew they were great tenants and I knew they just wanted to rent. I knew they didn't want to buy. So why would you not then just buy a property for them? And if it all went pear-shaped, it's like I'll just put somebody else in the property. It doesn't matter because the property is really good
Yeah.
demand, and I'll get the right return anyway. See, I talked about the return, but I talked about the return in an aspect of, again, as we talked about before, it's that I need the right return in order to make sure the finance is covered, make sure any repairs and improvements are covered if I need to do them, and also make sure any occupancy issues are actually covered as well. And maybe even the tenant maybe falls on hard times and can't pay the rent for a month. Can I take that hit?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people. There's a lot of landlords out there that can't just for 1 month.
Yeah, their break-even points, not where it should be.
The accidental landlords in the early days after the credit crunch actually fell foul of that quite a lot. You know, we did have a few, and I
Yeah.
remember some story. You know, Wagon Road was a particular one I remember. It's like, oh no, I'll rent it because I can't sell it, and it's like, but you're flipping heck. It's like your mortgage is exactly the same as the rent. You'll be paying tax. You won't, because your mortgage is capital repayment. You'll be paying tax every. Oh, but I'll have to. And then the repairs started racking up, and it's like, this isn't going to end well.
For them, yeah.
As much as we can help you, we can't pay this for you. You need to sort this out. And eventually it was like the property had to be sold. You know, no choice. But you're able to move the tenant to another property when that actually came up as a result of that, if they were a good tenant.
Yeah. Yeah, so and poorly managed maintenance issues and things will lead to complaints from your tenant, issues in the property, unnecessary problems, shrinking profits, all of which can be avoided with that earlier action being put in place. So that's something to think about. Management and the repairs and cowboy contractors and inspections and things are also important.
One of the things I think, and yeah, you were just about to take the words out of my mouth there, is the compliance issues.
Yeah.
And when I buy a portfolio as the one I'm going to now, I'm buying 9 and I'm tagging on another one from someone else.
Yeah.
Purposely, because I just phoned them up yesterday, the solicitor, and I went, you see that other one, can you just tag that in with the same sale so I can avoid the ADS? The ADS is about 4.5 grand. It's like, I've just saved myself 4.5 grand just because I'm tagging on with the other ones. I've got MMR, which is MDR, multiple dwellings relief, MDR, not MMR. That's a jag, is it not? Measles, mumps, and rubella. That's not me. That's for girls. Anyway, apart from that, I've got MDR, multiple dwellings relief. At commercial rate, though, because it's your residential rate is no longer existing, but commercial rate still applies, and it does on a portfolio purchase, but it is a lot lower. So I've got to pay that as well, but it's going to be a lot less than the 4.5 grand I've got to pay for that one property, I would say. So I'm actually quite enthused that I've managed to do that. But the legal compliance I'm going through just now with the 9 properties, and I'm sorry, Richard, but I'm just going to contact the team on Monday morning and say, by the way, I'm buying the 9 and it's going to be in 2 weeks' time.
I'm sure they'll have a delay when they get that phone call.
Here's all the details. You're going to have to speak to the tenants, please. I should have done that a lot later, but I know it's going to be done on the 27th. So it gives them a couple of weeks to sort that out. And I made sure, because part of my compliance in purchasing the properties is all the EICRs are done, all the Legionella, all the gas certificates, all the smoke testing, smoke detector testing and heat detector are in place. And then I think there was another one.
EPCs, but they come with
EPC as well. All the EPCs are at sea.
That's good. I know. I was looking at some of them.
My God, happy days. See, it's like there's no refurbs needing to be done for energy efficiency. Wow. And I'm getting a really good price for them. But it's only where my numbers work, and that's the reason that we're doing it, for that reason. So that'll be coming towards the end of this month. But legal compliance is definitely the one I talked about, the legislations. It's ever changing every single time. So you have to keep abreast of that. And I'll be honest, I don't. But I still know, because there's certain blogs and vlogs, and I always ask you now and again what the things I need to get. So the outdated certificates you've got to watch out for is the ones that I've just been talking about now. You need to check and make sure you've got a good gas certificate. If you're buying a property as an investor and you're buying it from someone, make sure the gas certificate has got a good length of time on it, and the EICR has probably got a good certificate length of time on it, because the EICR legislation's changed in the last couple of years, and it changes all the time and gets higher and higher standard. Therefore, you're going to have to do something. So you'll be faced with at least £1,000 repair bill or improvement bill on an EICR. It's maybe within the next year. So just take that into account. You're going to probably have to pay for new standards to be set. But if you've got one that's just done, which I have done, because it was within 3 or 4 months, I've insisted to the landlord, I'm not buying them until you get a new EICR on these, because I'm not taking the hit in 2 months' time that there's got to be something done about these.
Yeah, because then you could even have, like you say, £1,000, possibly up to £1,500 per property.
And disruption. So what will happen is I'll have the £2,000 for each property, because the EICR is due for renewal, and then I'll have the disruption for getting it done while I've not got a tenant in there, possibly, or there might be a tenant in there, and the disruption to the tenant, which could end up them moving out as well, and I have a void. So there's not just £2,000 extra on the price of the property on each property. It's maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. If the tenant moves out, it's maybe a full refurb. Because maybe they were happy living in that, because that's how they created their environment, and that's fine for them. But to get a new higher quality tenant in, you might have to completely refurb the property. And I hear people saying, why do you not do it when the tenant's in there? Because the tenant chooses to live like that. They got a property like that in the first place, and it ended up like that. And not wear and tear, by the way. That's just how they live.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of things you've got to account for as well. So outdated certificates, energy performance certificates, electric smoke alarms obtained, and renew the correct moments, and make sure they're valid and they've got quite a length of time on them. It's like the MOT when people sell a car. It's like the MOT is due for renewal in 2 months' time. It's like, something's dodgy there. Eh? It's like that's why they're trying to sell it quick.
It runs out in a couple of weeks.
Ignore the safety obligations as well is a real classic. When people ignore it, the letting legislation stipulates minimum living standards, and if your agent neglects them, your tenant can file a complaint that could be costly and dearly to the landlord. And a real good classic is, see the amount of times you're on the property networks and people ask for advice anonymously, by the way, because they don't want to be known. But it's things that are like they're breaching the standard repairing act.
They should know that.
They're breaching the standard repairing act, but they don't know. We've had I even found a letting agent asking whether they should repair a window it doesn't actually properly close and secure. Because it's 1 story up and nobody's going to get in. Well, sorry, but I can get a wee folding ladder. I can just get a wee telescopic ladder and get in that anytime I want. But their justification was, but everybody else in the street leaves their windows open at night. Because they're in the property. No, because they're out.
Yeah, it seems it's quite alien to me sometimes, the things that people tend to kind of just put their head in the sand, especially when it comes to legal compliance and things as well, and abiding by the Repair and Standard Act and things. But it happens a lot more than you would imagine. And if you're a reputable agent or landlord, you would think, God, I can't believe they do that, but they do, and it does happen.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it could cost you dearly. There is fines and things and penalties in place for not adhering to the legislation and certificates and things. Deadlines
Deposit.
and deadlines and
Yeah.
missing deadlines and deposits generally,
Mhm.
like it comes into it. And that's something as well that I notice a lot of people don't follow properly. I mean, whether it's your deposit protection notices, so you've got 30 days to bank that from the start of the tenancy. And a lot of people have still bumped into landlords that across the years, and they're like, "Oh, the deposit's in my bank." I'm like, "Well, it shouldn't be. It should be in the deposit scheme." And it's just crazy. And you could get
That's
fined up to
mental.
three times the deposit amount with it for not banking it in the
I
correct
often
time.
feel like starting a wee company on the side, a wee side hustle, and the fact that, you know, get 3 times the deposit out of your landlord automatically, because that's what the
Like the
First Street
PPI
Tribunal
claim.
award. Yeah, that's what the tribunal awards, 3 times the deposit if you don't lodge it
Yeah,
on time. So
yeah,
I often like, well, I tell you what, we'll go 50-50, and I'll put the claim in for you, and I'll take 1.5 times the deposit as my fee.
yeah.
Surprised no one started that.
Just going to say that's a money making scheme somebody might pick up on, but because there is still a lot out there, unfortunately, and it shouldn't be like that. And if you've got an agent who knows what they're doing, they will know the legal timelines during the 30 days. They'll have it all done properly.
I don't
And
think it's the agents though, Richard. It's the landlords.
it's the landlords, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If you're a landlord and you have a
Yeah.
reputable agent, they'll do all that and it will be sorted. But there's a lot of self-managed that don't have that knowledge or decline to follow the right guidelines on the timeline for banking the deposit or bank it at all.
According to
Keep it
this
and
fella,
spend it,
there's a
which is
huge amount. There's a
yeah.
huge amount that's self-managed, and I'm like, really? They're still self-managing? It's like, oh my god! It's
Mhm.
like, and it's because they're on the breadline or they need the income, so they take the fact that I'll get that small income that I would have paid the letting agent, and that'll be mine as part and parcel of doing that. I'll be honest. In the early days, I kind of looked at it like that. I kind of looked at it like, if I build a portfolio and I manage the portfolio, I can then take the income out a letting agent would have charged me as what to live on. I
Yeah.
actually didn't do that. I actually just left everything in and just lived on my salary that I got from my job. That's all I did. So I kept building wealth more and more every single time. But for some people, they actually look at it like that. For me personally, I'm not really sure if that's the right thing to do. It depends if your tolerance of your mental health is quite high or
Mhm.
low. It all depends on what the communication you're willing to take. Like the phone calls at 10 o'clock at night, my pipes
Yeah.
burst or my heating's no working, or when you're on holiday and stuff like that. These are the sort of things you maybe want to cope with. Now, you know, Alex, he's got 200 odd properties, and he says, yeah, I manage that all right. And I'm thinking, God, I'm not really sure if I would want to do that. Then
That's a
remember, I'm working a full-time job. He's not. This is his. This is what he does as a landlord.
yeah.
He is a landlord. I am an investor. I have
Yeah.
got no inclination anymore because I've done it. I've had the book. I've done the film. I've got the DVD,
Yeah.
and I just don't want to be a landlord anymore. I just want to be a property investor, and
Yeah.
that is someone who buys the property, gives it to a managing agent, and then lets them do all the work and the heavy
Mhm.
lifting for them.
Yeah, definitely. And as we talk about, obviously, if you've got a good agent who abides by the legal compliance and things, you need to have trust in your agent. Landlord regulations and legislation and things, not abiding by that, it's quite strict. And there are penalties and sometimes hefty fines or even criminal prosecution when it comes to gas safety and things. Don't leave yourself home. If your
Yeah.
agent is poorly informed and careless with compliance, then it's something that you really need to maybe look at because you as the landlord will be held responsible in some instances like that, not the agent. And always remember that.
So what other the final telltale sign? Maybe maybe the property's been badly managed, and the 5 signs, and it's your time to change. Maybe your letting agent or your managing agent.
Yeah.
What's the final 5th one then? That we talked
So
about.
I wanted to round up today to talk about the unclear and unexpected fees that come with the lettings procedure, and whether transparency. I think with an agent and a landlord, or an agent and your investor, transparency with fees and what is charged is really essential for having that trust in your agent. If you're noticing unexpected charges or some hidden fees in their procedure, it's a sign that your agent may not be the right fit for you, because you need to be. It's all about trust and transparency, I think. If you're receiving unexpected invoices, say your agent tell you you've got maybe some required maintenance or repairs that exceed the pre-authorised budget, because we have a pre-authorised budget with our landlords. Do you know, just for minor day-to-day things that might happen, you're fine to do that. So you could approve the works and the costs first for anything that's higher than that. But if you're getting invoices through and you're like, I didn't know anything about this, you never informed me about it, you never let me look at quotes. Do you know, that's not a relationship that should be transpiring between an agent and a landlord. I think inconsistent and vague pricing as well. Do you know, if you've not got a clear set in stone, this is what it's going to cost. Here's a comparison from another contractor, and then advising them what way to go with. Do you know, on your professional opinion, not just saying here's a quote, make a choice. Do you know, advise the landlord. Here's the two quotes. This one's maybe slightly more, but I would go with this contractor because they're providing maybe a better service or a better product, or do you know,
maybe quicker.
Yes, and time as well.
They're maybe quicker. One takes 6 months and one doesn't. So if your property is empty and it needs a refurb before it actually gets a tenant, and if it's 6 months, then you're 500 quid rent, then you've lost £3,000. If the differential between the other one starting 6 months earlier is maybe £2,000, it makes sense actually to get the other one start earlier.
Yeah.
And just pay the extra £2,000, because you're losing £3,000 anyway if you're having it empty for the 6 months for the other one to start. Because the assumption is they'll both take the same amount of time to finish it, and they'll both do the same amount of work. So in a ideal world with one thing changing, then that's definitely the one to go for. So you might pay a bit extra, but then you're getting the benefit of getting a tenant straight away. So therefore, you're not covering the utilities anymore. You're not getting into the council tax, level. You're not getting charged on you. When it's getting refurbed, by the way, if it's only a light refurb, you're still paying 90% of the council tax. If it's a major refurb, you could probably get away, and here's the key here, with a 12 months repair and refurbish improvement council tax exemption. So that's a 12-month one. But you have to obviously start the works, and you have to tell them what you're doing, and then they'll decide, the local authority, whether you're allowed that full 12-month exemption for that major refurbishment. And we're talking about ripping out kitchens, rewiring, replumbing, and putting in bathrooms and stuff like that. That's a major thing. Something possibly that has to be done, or the property can never be occupied. I think that's what would qualify.
Yeah, definitely. So I think and you need to be quite transparent about the cost of that, and the reasons why maybe the more expensive contractor is the right choice, because a landlord might not see that, and once you make it clear to them, then that makes perfect sense when you explain it to me, but it might not to somebody else. So there's a way of doing it as well. I think as well, agents really need to be upfront about their fees that they charge, and everything from what it's going to cost to actually find the tenant and put them in place, renewals of the tenancy, the management fees ongoing from there. To then avoid that kind of budget surprise that the landlord has. They've got one price in mind for that process, and you're going to then add on stuff at the end that you've not obviously disclosed to them. Shouldn't be like that, and it should be really clear and precise at the beginning what it's going to cost, and their expectation of what the final bill is going to be. And there's nothing worse when there's unexpected cost at the end, and then that conversation has to be had, which is a lot more awkward than just being clear and concise and transparent at the beginning about what it's going to cost. That's something I think is really important, especially for a letting and managing agent with their client.
Yeah, I'll cover this final one. This is quite an interesting one, because this is a controversial subject for, markup on contractors' fees. But you have to remember, and this was actually the Scottish Association of Landlords that actually, I discussed it with John Blackwood about this, the chair for there. And he says, well, you've got to understand that bigger letting agencies can get economies of scale, so they can get contractors to do prices at less. But that's their bonus. That's not your bonus. You're not supposed to be getting the benefit that they're getting, because that's no what managing a property is all about. The managing a property is actually getting the job done effective at the right price. That's what it is. So feel free, if you think possibly the higher contractor bills that you might be getting presented is excessive, feel free to just go and get another quote from someone else. But
Yeah.
somebody else that you know, just know any man and their dog that you get off Trusted Trader. It's like
Yeah.
started up last week and I'll do it for 50 pence.
Yeah.
You know, know anything like
Got
that.
somebody
Somebody you
reputable.
know, possibly, and you maybe just have a word with them and say, you know, any chance you could just price that up for me and see what your thoughts are on it. As a favour, maybe be transparent with them and say, look, you know, I'm getting charged this from a managing agency, but also point them to the managing agency as well. They might be a contractor they may be able to use.
Yeah.
So there's a win-win situation for you could tell somebody because they're going, well, why would I want to do that? Because I'm not going to get the job. All I'm doing is doing it as a comparable with someone else. But you've got an opportunity possibly to get the job, to be honest, and possibly the contractor, the letting agent, to take that contractor onto their books and get more work. And you're no need to continually have to look for work. I know a lot of contractors out there at this point in time are like, well, work's just coming all the time. Yeah.
It's not always going to be
Tell
like
you
that.
what, on the way up, make sure you treat everybody right, because when you're going down, that'll determine how fast you go.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, and it's a good point to make when it comes to, do you know, the markup side of things, or the discount that bigger agents that have got that discount from the contractor, how it maybe isn't really transferable to the landlord in that case. But yeah, I definitely think that contractor bills is something as well. I think what we're trying to see here is a reliable and transparent agent. They'll go out their way to show that they have your best interests at heart in every opportunity. They should. And if that's not your experience, then maybe it's time to start asking questions and have a bit of a review. I will say though, I mean, if you are feeling like your property or your portfolio is not being managed correctly, I wouldn't say just jump in and think I'm going to change agents, because changing agents can be a really disruptive and a big thing, you know, for your tenants, for you. So try and work things out with the agent that you've got. I mean, if it can't be fixed, then I would move on. But yeah,
this is where as well you sometimes find maybe another letting agency takes over the letting agency they've got, and they fall out with them immediately because they're not doing them the systems they're doing, or they're wanting to increase the prices, and then it just doesn't go well. You know, have a conversation with them, and then, you know, have a conversation with the managing agent you want to go to. But my advice would be, if the tenant's still sitting there in situ, you know, and it's working okay, and you're still getting your rent paid, I would wait till the property becomes empty, possibly, before you change to the other agent, the other managing agent.
To do it in the middle of tenancies and things is a risky business as well.
It's disruptive to the tenant, because you know what it's like when I take over portfolios and you have to go around and they tell them, they get all worried and they get upset, and you have to allay their fears. It's like, no, you're not getting evicted. And no, we're not going to hike your rent up to a maximum amount so you'll not be able to afford it and bleed you dry. It's like, we'll not be doing that, and we'll all look after the property. It will be, well, I was going to say we'll make sure we're just as good as the previous landlord, but more than likely, I tend to take them off of landlords that aren't that good, I suppose, and then I'll have to end up doing all the repairs and improvements, and that's why they're in the situation they're in, because of that. So I'll have to qualify that by saying, but still have that conversation with your existing managing agent. Just tell them what's going wrong. Just be honest with them, you know, and what you would like to improve. They might end up turning around saying, look, if you're wanting that type of service, you're going to have to pay 15%, you know, or, you know, whatever, and you're going to have to pay a bit more to get that type of service. But then you're getting what you want, and probably the time that you're getting back and the hassle that you're having to, because if you have to get onto your managing agent, for example, say, I don't know, in total, maybe half an hour a month, if that's the case. An hour a month, 12 hours a year. It doesn't sound much, but if you take 12 hours and think to yourself, what could you do with 12 hours? That's effectively 1.5 days, you know, 8-hour days or something like that. So that's effectively 1.5 days, or maybe a day that you're losing because you're too busy going back and forward. What value do you put on that day?
Yeah.
And 3% extra. If you were at a 12 and you went to a 15 and you were 3% extra and your rent was 600 quid, times 0.03 is £18 times 1.2 is 21 times 12 is another 260 quid a year to get a day back. Would you pay 260 quid for a day? I'd pay 260 quid for an hour of my time.
Yeah, and whether that's a day or even an hour that you spend with your family, or you earn money elsewhere in your other job, do you know, that's when you need to think about the time and money thing, and the service that you're getting. There's a lot of things that you could ask if things are not going the right way. We've covered quite a lot of them today. The blog is attached to this video, so you could see everything that we've covered today and the questions in there. But if you're unsure or feeling like you're not quite sure with your agent, my contact details are in this blog as well. Feel free to come to me direct and ask any questions. Or indeed, if you're watching this in the rerun, jump in the comments, we'll pick it up and come back to people. But hopefully that's covered a lot of the general, the top 5 concerns, and we've broken that down, that agents and landlords have between them if things are not working out how they should be. And I think I'll leave it there for today.
Good stuff.
So thanks for joining, Jim. Thanks for your insights as usual, and thanks to everybody who's been watching. And anybody watching on the rerun, feel free to jump in and ask any questions, and we'll come back to you. Okay.
Bye for now.
Jim. See you later.